The galaxy believed the Valkyrie commander was unbeatable until the day her perfect strategy failed and left her fleet broken among the stars. Then a human rescue soldier arrived with no rank, no glory, and no promise of victory. He carried only his mistakes, his courage, and a question that would change an entire civilization. What if the greatest commanders were not those who never failed? Welcome to Intergalactic Untold. We hope you enjoy this story and have a wonderful day filled with happiness. Now, let us begin this unforgettable journey across the stars. The first time Serafina Vera lost a battle, the galaxy did not remember the enemy fleet. It remembered the silence afterward. The Valkyrie commander who had spent her entire life proving that perfect calculations could save lives watched her formation collapse above the frozen world of Neuralis. Her neural command system had predicted thousands of outcomes. Every possibility, every movement, every risk, except the one that happened. The enemy did not defeat her strength. They defeated her certainty. The bridge of the Vera's oath was almost silent. Emergency lights painted the damaged command chamber in deep red. Around Serafina, officers moved carefully through broken consoles, repairing systems that had once been considered impossible to damage. The carrier was alive, but barely. The tactical display still showed the final moments of the battle. Her fleet had followed the calculated path. Her warriors had trusted her decision. And when the unknown variable appeared, they paid the price. General Valek Thorn stood near the command platform, his expression unreadable. He had trained Serafina since she was young. He had taught her that a Valkyrie's greatest duty was not victory. It was protecting those who followed. The retreat order was correct, he said quietly. Serafina did not look away from the display. It came too late. Valek remained silent. He knew her well enough to understand what she was not saying. Avarian commanders were trained to accept losses during impossible situations. But Serafina did not see numbers first. She saw names, faces, people who had trusted her judgment. The report would call Neuralis a tactical failure. Serafina considered it a personal one. Commander Vera, a communication officer, said, "A recovery vessel has entered the sector." Serafina looked at the incoming signal. The identification appeared across the screen. Human Emergency Response Division. A rescue craft. Not a warship. Not reinforcement. A rescue vessel. For a moment, she almost found the situation ironic. The legendary Valkyrie fleet had failed. Now civilians were arriving to recover what remained. 30 minutes later, the human ship connected to the damaged carrier. The docking doors opened, and Ethan Walker stepped inside carrying a medical scanner and a worn repair case. His uniform had no impressive markings. No command symbols, no medals, just the simple equipment of someone who arrived after disasters happened. Serafina studied him carefully. "You are not authorized to board this vessel." Ethan looked around the damaged corridor. That is true. His agreement surprised her. Most people either challenged a Valkyrie or apologized to one. This human did neither. "Then why are you here?" she asked. Ethan opened his scanner. "Because your life support system is failing." "That was not my question." He looked at her for a moment. "Because people are still alive." The answer was simple, almost frustratingly simple. Serafina followed him through the damaged sections of the carrier. She expected confidence. She expected someone who believed he could solve everything. Instead, she found a person who checked every measurement twice before touching anything. A person who asked engineers for information instead of giving orders. A person who admitted when he did not know something. "You are a soldier," Serafina said while watching him repair a damaged power relay. "But you do not act like one." Ethan tightened a connection. "I'm a rescue specialist." "There is a difference?" "Usually." He looked at the broken system in front of him. Soldiers are often trained to win situations. Rescue teams are trained to recover from situations that already went wrong. The answer stayed with her. Later, while reviewing his records, Serafina discovered something unexpected. Ethan Walker was not famous. He had no legendary missions. Instead, his file contained difficult rescues, damaged equipment, and one incident marked with restricted access. The Orion drift collapse. A failed evacuation where Ethan had chosen one rescue route over another. Some survived. Others did not. The final statement from his report was short. "I made the decision with the information available. I still wish I had seen more." Serafina read the sentence twice. He carried his failure openly. He did not hide it behind excuses. He did not pretend the outcome was unavoidable. When she found him later repairing the same damaged scanner he carried onto the ship, she asked, "Why keep something that failed?" Ethan looked at the device in his hands. "Because it worked when it mattered." He paused. "And because I need to remember that things can fail without becoming useless." Outside the observation window, the stars moved silently around the damaged carrier. Serafina had spent her entire life searching for perfect commanders. But the human standing beside her was something different. He was not someone who never failed. He was someone who understood the cost of failure. And for the first time since Neuralis, the Valkyrie wondered if that was the quality her civilization had been missing. The damaged carrier moved slowly through the Neuralis recovery corridor, its engines operating at only 60% capacity. For most officers aboard the Vera's Oath, the mission had become a repair operation. For Serafina Vera, it had become something far more difficult. It had become an examination of everything she believed about command. She spent hours reviewing the final battle data, not because she expected to find a different outcome. The numbers would not change. The fallen would not return. But she needed to understand the moment where her certainty had failed. The Avarian Neural Command System had done exactly what it was designed to do. It analyzed patterns. It calculated probabilities. It selected the highest survival outcome based on millions of historical engagements. The system had not malfunctioned. That was the part that troubled her most. The system had worked perfectly. Reality had simply been more complicated than the data it carried. "You have reviewed the same report 17 times. General Valek, Thorn's voice came from behind her. Serafina did not turn. 16. Valek stepped beside her and looked at the frozen tactical display. "That is somehow worse." A faint silence followed. From anyone else, the comment might have sounded like criticism. From Valek, it was concern. He had known Serafina since she was a young cadet who believed discipline could solve every problem. He had been the one who taught her that a commander carried the weight of every decision. "I made the correct choice with incomplete information," Serafina said. Valek studied her. "Yes." She finally looked at him. "You agree?" "I agree that it was the correct choice based on what you knew." He paused. "That does not mean there was nothing to learn." The word stayed with her. Avarian commanders were trained to improve strategies. But Serafina realized she had spent the last several days trying to prove she had not made a mistake. She was defending herself from a failure that nobody had accused her of creating. The thought disturbed her. The communication alert interrupted them. The human rescue vessel had finished docking. Ethan Walker entered the engineering section with a small team. He immediately ignored the command deck and went toward the damaged systems. Serafina followed. Most officers would report to the commander first. Ethan looked over his shoulder. Most officers are not here because the commander's chair needs repairing. The answer was not disrespectful. It was simply practical. He opened a damaged panel and scanned the internal systems. "Your coolant regulation is unstable. Our engineers already identified that." Ethan nodded. "Good. Then they are ahead of schedule." Serafina watched him carefully. He did not arrive believing he was the smartest person in the room. He arrived looking for information. "You trust people easily," she said. Ethan adjusted a connection. "No," the answer came quickly. "I verify things." She looked at him. "That sounds different." "It is." He checked the readings again. Trust means someone has earned responsibility. Verification means you respect reality enough to check. The statement reminded her of Avarian doctrine. But the meaning was different. The difference was subtle. Ethan was not rejecting discipline. He was using it differently. Over the next several hours, Serafina watched him work. He questioned engineers. He changed plans when new information appeared. He never pretended to know more than he did. Yet everyone around him listened. Not because he demanded authority, because he respected theirs. Later, while reviewing his background file, Serafina opened the restricted report from Orion Drift collapse again. This time she read every line. Ethan had been 29 years old during the incident, the youngest team leader assigned to the evacuation. When the station began collapsing, he had limited time and incomplete data. He chose one route. It saved 37 people. Another group remained trapped. The report did not accuse him of negligence. The investigation concluded that no available choice could have guaranteed success. But Ethan had written his own final note. A correct decision can still leave someone behind. Serafina stared at the sentence. Most commanders searched for proof that they had been right. Ethan had searched for the people his decision could not save. That was the first thing about him that truly confused her. He carried failure differently. Not as shame, not as an excuse, as a responsibility. She found him later sitting near the repair bay, holding his damaged scanner. You keep equipment that should have been replaced. Ethan looked at the device. Probably. Why? He turned it over in his hand. Because it reminds me to check what I missed. Serafina looked at the broken casing. You believe a mistake should follow you forever? Ethan shook his head. No. He placed the scanner on the table. I believe forgetting a mistake is how it happens again. For the first time since Neuralis, Serafina did not see a soldier standing in front of her. She saw a person who had built his entire way of living around one difficult truth. Perfection was impossible. Responsibility was not. Outside the ship, the stars remained silent. But somewhere between a fallen Valkyrie commander and a human rescue soldier who carried his failures openly, something neither civilization expected had begun. Not trust. Not yet. Trust had to be earned. But perhaps the first step toward trust was the willingness to admit that someone else might see a truth you could not. The simulation chamber beneath the Avarian Command Academy had not changed in 3 decades. The walls were still built from dark alloy. The tactical interface still projected endless possibilities across the air. Generations of Valkyrie commanders had entered this room believing the same thing. A commander was tested by finding the correct answer. Serafina Vera entered the chamber knowing she might find something else. Ethan Walker stood across from her, studying the scenario loaded into the system. He looked different from the warriors she had trained beside. He did not carry the confidence of someone expecting victory. He carried the focus of someone preparing to understand failure. This is not a combat assessment, Serafina said. Ethan looked at the simulation parameters. Then what is it? A command evaluation. He glanced at her. Those are usually combat assessments with better wording. For a moment, Serafina almost smiled. Almost. The simulation began. A remote colony appeared on the display. Its communication network had collapsed after a solar storm. 2 critical objectives were identified. The first was an advanced research facility containing valuable data. The second was a group of maintenance workers trapped inside a damaged underground sector. The Avarian system calculated the optimal response immediately. Protect the research facility. Preserve strategic knowledge. Rescue operations could continue later. The probability model was clear. 84% mission success. Serafina watched Ethan carefully. This was where she expected him to reveal his philosophy. Instead, he remained silent. He studied the information. The damage reports. The environmental readings. The available transport capacity. You are hesitating, she said. Ethan nodded. Yes. Why? He pointed toward the display. Because something is missing. Serafina looked at the simulation. The system has provided all available data. Ethan shook his head. Available data is not the same as complete information. The answer reminded her of the Neuralis battle. Unknown variables. Unexpected outcomes. The same problem her civilization had struggled with for centuries. The simulation continued. Ethan adjusted the rescue route. Instead of securing the research facility first, he redirected resources toward the trapped workers while attempting a remote backup of the facility data. The result changed instantly. Rescue probability increased. Strategic preservation probability decreased. The system marked the choice as inefficient. Your decision reduces overall mission success, Serafina said. Ethan nodded. I know. Then why choose it? He looked at the trapped workers' signals. Because the mission has 2 objectives. The facility affects millions. The workers affect their families. Serafina watched him carefully. She expected an emotional argument. Instead, she saw something more complicated. Ethan was not ignoring the larger picture. He was refusing to remove the smaller one. The simulation progressed. For several minutes, the plan succeeded. Then the unexpected happened. A hidden reactor instability caused a chain reaction. The research facility collapsed before the data extraction finished. The screen turned red. Mission failure. The chamber became quiet. Serafina waited. She expected him to explain, to defend the choice, to say the simulation was unfair. Ethan simply looked at the result. I missed the reactor instability. Serafina studied him. You admit the failure immediately. Yes. Most commanders would argue the outcome was caused by insufficient information. Ethan looked at the failed simulation. That would be true. He paused. It would also be incomplete. The answer caught her attention. Explain. Ethan stepped closer to the display. A commander always makes decisions with incomplete information. Saying the information was incomplete does not remove responsibility. The words stayed in the chamber. Not because they were dramatic, because they were honest. After the evaluation ended, Serafina reviewed the results alone. She expected to find a reckless commander guided by compassion. Instead, she found something else. Ethan's approach had weaknesses. His priority system created strategic vulnerabilities. His emotional consideration could become a disadvantage if left unchecked. But the report also showed something rare. His mistakes were visible, measurable, correctable. The next morning, she confronted him in the training area. Your approach is flawed. Ethan was repairing a damaged training device. He looked up. Yes. The simple answer surprised her. You agree? Of course. He continued working. A plan can be flawed and still contain something useful. Serafina crossed her arms. You do not try to prove yourself right. Ethan shook his head. That wastes time. Then what are you trying to prove? He looked at the device in his hands. That the next decision can be better than the last one. For the first time, Serafina understood why Ethan was difficult to classify. He was not a traditional commander. He did not seek certainty. He sought improvement. He was not someone who avoided failure. He was someone who studied it until it became knowledge. When she left the training chamber, the conclusion was not what she expected. Ethan Walker was not the answer to every command problem. He was not a replacement for a variant doctrine. But perhaps that was exactly why he mattered. The future did not need a commander who had every answer. It needed commanders willing to discover better ones. The first joint mission between the Avarian fleet and the Human Emergency Response Division was not created to prove which civilization had the better way of thinking. Officially, it was a simple rescue operation. A research station near the edge of Avarian territory had suffered a navigation failure after a solar storm disrupted its guidance systems. No enemy, no battle, no strategic victory to claim. Only hundreds of lives waiting for someone to make the right decision. Serafina Vera considered that more difficult than any battlefield. Wars created clear enemies. Rescue missions created impossible choices. The command vessel entered the damaged station's orbit slowly. Outside the observation window, broken sections of the facility rotated through the darkness, reflecting the pale light of emergency signals. Inside the command chamber, two different systems analyzed the situation. The Avarian Neural Command System processed structural data, predicting thousands of possible outcomes. The Human Response Network focused on changing conditions and incomplete information. Both systems were advanced. Both systems had limits. The Eastern Corridor has the highest survival probability, Serafina said while studying the tactical display. Ethan Walker looked at the same information. For how many people? She turned toward him. That is not the question. It should be. The answer was quiet. Not challenging. Not disrespectful. Just different. Serafina looked back at the display. The Eastern Corridor would save the majority. It was the logical choice. The kind of choice she had made her entire career. The Western section has unstable pressure levels, she said. Ethan nodded. Yes. Then why are you still considering it? He looked at the life signals appearing across the screen. Because someone designed this system to measure probability. A pause. Not importance. The words bothered her because they were not entirely wrong. They also bothered her because they were not enough. Command could not exist without calculation. A leader who ignored consequences was not compassionate. They were reckless. Your approach creates uncertainty, she said. Ethan looked at her. So does pretending uncertainty does not exist. The mission began before the argument could continue. Avarian teams moved toward the Eastern Corridor, using precision equipment to stabilize damaged structures. Human rescue specialists entered smaller maintenance routes where conditions changed too quickly for prediction systems. At first, everything worked. Then the station changed. A secondary reactor chamber began overheating. The structural model shifted. The corridor Serafina selected remained stable, but the alternative routes began collapsing faster than expected. Warning lights filled the command deck. New failure pattern detected, an officer announced. Serafina watched the data update. The Avarian system recalculated. The probability changed. Not enough. The original plan would still save more people. The numbers were clear. Then Ethan spoke. The lower maintenance section is losing artificial gravity. Serafina looked at him. That area was not part of the primary rescue route. I know. Then why are you watching it? Ethan pointed toward the readings. Because the people there stopped moving. Silence followed. Serafina understood. The system had classified the area as low priority. Ethan had noticed something the system could not measure. Human behavior. Fear. Confusion. The small signs that existed between numbers. She looked at the tactical display again. Your route has a lower success probability. Ethan nodded. Yes. Then you accept that some may not survive. He looked at the trapped signals. Yes. Serafina studied him. Months earlier, she would have mistaken that answer for coldness. Now she understood. Ethan was not pretending every life could be saved. He was accepting the weight of the decision. What do you need? She asked. Ethan looked surprised for a moment. Then he answered. Your team can stabilize the outer frame. My team can reach the lower section. Serafina gave the order. For the first time, neither method controlled the operation. They combined. Avarian precision created stability. Human adaptation created opportunity. The rescue succeeded. But not perfectly. 2 drones were lost. Several systems were damaged. The station would require months of repair. The final report contained both achievements and failures. Ethan spent hours reviewing the damaged equipment list afterward. Serafina found him sitting alone near the repair bay. You saved everyone inside. Ethan looked at the report. Not everyone. The mission was successful. He nodded. Yes. Then why are you focused on what went wrong? Ethan touched the damaged rescue drone. Because success does not erase mistakes. Serafina was silent. You always look for the failure. Ethan looked at her. Someone has to. Why? He placed the damaged component back onto the table. Ethan was showing her something different. A commander's duty was to create a better answer after reality proved the first one incomplete. The mission did not prove that humans were superior. It proved something far more difficult to accept. Even the strongest systems were incomplete when they faced a universe they had not yet learned to understand. The approval of the Neuralis rescue report did not bring peace to the Avarian command structure. It created a new question. For the first time in generations, a human method had been placed beside Valkyrie doctrine, and many officers were unsure whether that represented progress or danger. General Valek Thorn understood the hesitation better than anyone. He had seen civilizations collapse because leaders abandoned the principles that protected them. He had also seen civilizations disappear because they refused to change when reality demanded it. The difference between wisdom and fear was often difficult to recognize. The command council gathered 3 days after the rescue operation. The chamber was built beneath the oldest military archive on Avaria. The walls carried the names of Valkyries who had defended their people through centuries of conflict. Every name represented a sacrifice. Every name represented a decision. Serafina Vera stood beneath those names while officers reviewed the Neuralis data. The outcome was successful, one commander said. But the operational model requires review. Serafina remained silent. She expected resistance. What she did not expect was the direction it came from. The concern is not the human soldier, General Valek said. The room became quiet. The concern is what happens if we mistake one individual's ability for a replacement of doctrine. Serafina looked at him. Months ago, she would have considered the statement an attack. Now she heard something else. Concern. You believe his methods are dangerous, she said. Valek shook his head. No, his answer came slowly. I believe any method becomes dangerous when people stop questioning it. The word surprised her. Ethan Walker stood outside the main discussion chamber, reviewing the mission report. He had been invited to speak. He declined. This is an Avarian decision, he told Serafina. I should not be the reason they make it. She remembered that. Ethan had never asked to become a symbol. He had never wanted to represent humanity. He only wanted decisions to be made carefully. Inside the council chamber, an officer displayed the Neuralis simulation results. The human approach increases adaptability, she said, but it also increases uncertainty. Serafina looked at the data. So does reality. The statement created silence. Not agreement. Consideration. Valek watched her carefully. He recognized that answer. It was the same quality he had once admired in her before Neuralis. The ability to think beyond instructions. The ability to question even herself. Commander Vera, Valek said, why do you believe this change is necessary? The question was not political. It was personal. Serafina looked at the archive walls, at the names of commanders who had carried impossible responsibilities. Because I spent my entire life believing a leader must have the correct answer before making a decision. She paused. Neuralis taught me something different. Nobody moved. A leader must understand the limits of the answer they have. Valak looked away for a moment. It was the closest thing to agreement he had shown. Later that evening, Serafina found him alone in the archive corridor. He was standing beside the record of his first command mission. You opposed me, she said. Valak did not turn. I questioned you. There is a difference. A large one. He touched the old inscription beneath his name. Opposition wants victory. Questions want understanding. Serafina looked at him. You were afraid. The words were direct. Valak accepted them. Yes. She waited. He continued. Not of the human. Of losing what made the Valkyrie survive. For the first time, she saw the weight he carried. He had watched commanders chase innovation without respecting history. He had watched good intentions create disasters. His caution was not weakness. It was memory. Then what do we do? Serafina asked. Valak looked toward the archive doors. We test it. The answer was simple. Not acceptance. Not rejection. Proof. Over the following months, the Joint Command Program expanded carefully. Human officers trained with Avarian tacticians. Valkyrie commanders studied human emergency protocols. There were disagreements, mistakes, frustrations. Some human officers thought Avarian procedures were too rigid. Some Avarian officers thought human improvisation was too unpredictable. But slowly, something changed. They stopped trying to prove which system was superior. They started asking where each system failed. Serafina watched Ethan during those sessions. He never presented humanity as the solution. He presented it as another perspective. That distinction mattered. One evening, she asked him why he never argued harder for human methods. Ethan looked at the training room where officers from different worlds worked together. Because the moment you believe your way is the only way, you stop learning. Serafina looked at the room again. Avarian discipline, human adaptability, different histories, different instincts, slowly becoming something new. The future was not being created by replacing one civilization with another. It was being created by two civilizations finally admitting that neither of them had all the answers. The Valkyries Belt was supposed to be the final test of the new joint command structure. Not because anyone expected failure, but because success had become too easy to measure. The previous missions had proven that human adaptation and Avarian precision could work together. Now they needed to discover whether they could still trust each other when both methods reached their limits. The mission began as a scientific recovery operation. A deep space research platform had entered a damaged orbital path after a gravitational disturbance from a nearby stellar fragment altered its trajectory. The station carried critical environmental data from several newly discovered worlds. More importantly, it carried 246 researchers and engineers waiting for rescue. Serafina Vera studied the tactical display from the command deck. Beside her, the Avarian neural command system processed millions of possible outcomes. The results appeared almost instantly. Primary extraction route confirmed, the tactical officer reported. Estimated survival probability, 88%. Serafina nodded. It was a strong solution. A disciplined solution. The kind of solution her people had trusted for centuries. Ethan Walker looked at another display. He was quiet. Serafina noticed immediately. You see a problem. Ethan did not answer immediately. He continued studying the data. I see something incomplete. A younger Avarian officer looked confused. The system has analyzed every available variable. Ethan glanced at the officer. Available variables are not always the same as important variables. Serafina remembered those words. They were becoming familiar. Not because Ethan always had the answer. Because he always questioned what others assumed was complete. Explain, she said. Ethan highlighted the station's communication logs. The crew stopped responding 12 minutes before the system predicted failure. Serafina looked at the data. A communication failure. Ethan shook his head. Maybe. He pointed to the power distribution map. Or a decision. The possibility changed the situation. The station was not just a damaged structure. Someone inside might have already changed the system to protect something. Or someone. The command team adjusted their plan. Avarian analysis recalculated structural risks. Human specialists reviewed human behavior patterns from the station crew. For the first time, the two systems were not competing. They were correcting each other. Then the unexpected happened. The station's emergency reactor entered unstable containment. The original extraction corridor began collapsing. Warning signals filled the command chamber. New probability assessment, the tactical officer announced. Primary route survival rate reduced to 59%. The room became tense. 59% was still acceptable. It was still the highest probability option. Serafina looked at the numbers. Her training told her what to do. Protect the majority. Maintain fleet safety. Avoid unnecessary losses. Then Ethan spoke. There are missing signals. Serafina turned. Where? He pointed toward the lower maintenance sectors. Here. The tactical display showed no active life markers. The system had already categorized the area as abandoned. There is no confirmation of survivors, an officer said. Ethan nodded. I know. Then why consider it? Ethan looked at the silent section of the map. For a moment, Serafina saw the memory behind his eyes. Or ion drift collapse. The choice he had made years ago. The people he had reached. The people he had not. Because no signal is not the same as no life, he said quietly. The statement carried no certainty, only responsibility. Serafina studied the options. The old Serafina would have chosen the safest mathematical outcome. The new one understood that mathematics was only as good as what it measured. What is your recommendation? She asked. Ethan looked surprised. He had expected debate, not trust. Split the rescue teams. The officer beside him immediately objected. That lowers overall success probability. Ethan nodded. Yes. Then why choose it? Ethan looked at the display. Because the current probability assumes we already know everyone who needs saving. Silence followed. Serafina made her decision. Proceed. The operation became the most difficult coordination attempt in the history of the Joint Command. Avarian teams stabilized the failing reactor with precise calculations. Human rescuers entered unpredictable sections where conditions changed every minute. Neither side could succeed alone. During the final extraction, Serafina discovered Ethan's route had one major flaw. He had underestimated the station's thermal collapse rate. The path was becoming dangerous faster than predicted. Walker, she said through communication, your route is failing. Ethan looked at the readings. I know. Then withdraw. A pause. Not yet. Serafina closed her eyes for a moment. Months earlier, she would have considered that disobedience. Now she understood the difference between ignoring orders and evaluating reality. What do you need? She asked. Ethan answered immediately. 30 seconds. She gave him 30 seconds. Not because she trusted his judgment completely. Because she trusted that he understood the cost. The final survivors were extracted moments before the maintenance section collapsed. The mission succeeded. But the report was not perfect. Equipment was lost. Time was wasted. Several decisions could have been better. Ethan spent the next 6 hours reviewing every mistake. Serafina found him in the repair bay, staring at the damaged scanner in his hand. You saved them, she said. Ethan looked at the broken device. We saved them. She noticed the difference. He did not separate himself from the team. He did not claim victory. You were right about the missing signals, she said. Ethan shook his head. I was lucky. Serafina studied him. You do not believe that. Ethan looked toward the repaired station. I believe being right once does not mean you will be right next time. That answer remained with her. The mission had not proven humans superior. It had not proven Avarian systems outdated. It had revealed something more valuable. Intelligence without adaptability became fragile. Compassion without discipline became dangerous. But together, they created something neither civilization had possessed alone. A way to make better decisions in a universe that refused to become predictable. The decision that changed Avarian command history was not made during a battle. There were no weapons fired. No enemy fleet approached. No dramatic victory appeared on any tactical display. It happened inside a quiet council chamber, where Serafina Vera was asked to choose what kind of future her civilization would accept. The request came 3 weeks after the Valkyrie's belt operation. The Joint Command Program had produced undeniable results. Human adaptability and Avarian precision had saved lives that neither method could have protected alone. But success created a new problem. People began asking what came next. The Central Council chamber was filled with senior commanders, historians, and representatives from every major military division. Behind them stood the ancient records of the Valkyries. Thousands of names, thousands of decisions. A history built on discipline, sacrifice, and certainty. General Valak Thorn stood before the council. "The results are clear," he said. "The joint command structure has exceeded expectations." Several officers exchanged uncertain looks. The approval was not what they feared. The implications were. Valak continued. "The question is not whether this system works." He looked toward Serafina. "The question is whether we understand why." Serafina remained silent. She knew this was not about Ethan Walker. It was about what his existence represented. For centuries, Avarian command had been built around one belief. The best leader was the one who could see the correct path before others. Ethan had challenged that belief without ever trying to. He had shown them that sometimes the correct path only appeared after someone admitted they could not see it. "Commander Vera," one council member said, "you have recommended integrating human strategic methods into Valkyrie doctrine. Are you suggesting our traditions are insufficient?" Serafina looked at the archive walls. She saw the names of commanders who had protected their people through impossible wars. She respected every one of them. "No," she answered. "I am suggesting our traditions were created to solve the problems of their time." The room became quiet. "And the universe has changed." The council member studied her. "You believe a human soldier changed our understanding of command?" Serafina paused. She thought about Ethan refusing recognition, Ethan accepting mistakes, Ethan questioning his own decisions before questioning others. "No," she said. "I believe reality changed it. He only helped us notice." Outside the chamber, Ethan stood near the observation corridor. He had refused a seat among the commanders. Serafina found him there afterward. "You could have defended yourself," she said. Ethan looked through the window at the distant fleet. "That would make it about me. Is that wrong?" He shook his head. "Just incomplete." She understood the answer. Ethan never saw himself as the solution, only as one piece of a larger problem. "You know they may never fully accept you," Serafina said. Ethan looked back at her. "I know. And you are comfortable with that?" He considered the question. No, the honesty surprised her. But being accepted was never the goal. Then what was? Ethan looked at the command vessels moving outside, making sure the next person has a better chance than the last one did. The final decision was not a victory for humanity. It was not a defeat for tradition. The council approved the adaptive command doctrine. Valkyrie training would remain. Avarian discipline would remain. Human emergency strategies would be studied and integrated where useful. Nothing was replaced. Everything expanded. The announcement created disagreement across the fleet. Some officers believed the change moved too quickly. Others believed it was long overdue. But the important difference was that the debate no longer centered around which species was superior. It centered around how commanders could improve. Months later, Serafina visited the training halls. Young officers from different worlds practiced together. Avarian cadets studied human rescue simulations. Human officers learned Valkyrie tactical discipline. Arguments still happened. Mistakes still happened. But something had changed. They no longer hid mistakes to protect pride. They analyzed them to create better decisions. Valak watched from the observation deck beside Serafina. "You changed the system," he said. She shook her head. "No." She looked at the training floor. "We allowed it to learn." The old commander was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. That was the difference between preserving a legacy and protecting it. A legacy that could not change would eventually disappear. A legacy willing to learn could survive anything. Serafina once believed a Valkyrie proved herself by carrying every burden alone. Ethan Walker had shown her another possibility. True command was not the strength to stand above everyone else. It was the courage to build something strong enough that others could stand beside you. The offer arrived 6 months after the creation of the adaptive command doctrine. It was written in the language of honor, wrapped in the traditions of Avarian military ceremony. Ethan Walker was being offered permanent command authority within the Valkyrie Strategic Division, a position that would make him the first human commander recognized by Avarian High Command. Most people would have accepted immediately. The title carried influence. The authority carried respect. The decision would have changed history. Ethan read the message 3 times before placing it back on the table. "You are refusing," Serafina Vera said. They were standing inside the old repair bay of the Vera's Oath. the same place where he had first entered her damaged carrier with a rescue scanner and no expectation of recognition. Ethan looked at the empty command insignia displayed on the screen. "I am declining." Serafina tilted her head slightly. "There is a difference?" "Yes." He looked at her. "Refusing means I do not value the position." A pause. "Declining means I understand what the position requires." The answer was exactly what she expected from him. And somehow, it still surprised her. "You realize what this means," she said. "Many people will see this as a rejection of the trust they gave you." Ethan nodded. "I know." "Then why do it?" He walked toward the old rescue equipment stored along the wall. His damaged scanner was still there, repaired many times, never replaced. "Because if the system works only when I am inside it, then we built the wrong system." Serafina watched him silently. Years ago, she would have considered that answer impossible. Commanders were supposed to become symbols, figures people followed. But Ethan had always moved in the opposite direction. Every success made him search for ways others could succeed without him. Every mistake made him build procedures so the next person would not repeat it. "You do not want to be remembered," she said. Ethan looked at the scanner in his hand. "That is not true." The answer made her pause. "You do not." He shook his head. "I want people to remember the lessons." He placed the scanner back on the table. "Not the person who learned them." The statement reached deeper than any speech could have, because Serafina understood what he was really saying. Leadership was temporary. Systems were not. Later that week, Ethan addressed the first graduating class of the Joint Command program. Officers from Earth, Avaria, and several allied worlds stood together in the training hall. Some had expected a legendary speech. Some expected a human explanation of why his civilization thought differently. Instead, Ethan looked at the group and asked a question. "How many of you believe a commander should always know the answer?" Several hands rose. He nodded. "Good." The officers looked surprised. "Because that belief exists for a reason. People need confidence when situations become difficult." He paused. "But there is a problem." The room became quiet. "The universe does not care how confident you are." No one moved. "You will face situations where the information is incomplete, where every choice has a cost, where being certain is easier than being correct." He looked across the room. "Your responsibility is not to avoid uncertainty. Your responsibility is to make the best decision you can, then have the courage to improve it when reality proves you wrong." Serafina listened from the back of the room. She noticed something important. Ethan was not teaching them to think like humans. He was teaching them to think like responsible commanders. Months later, the first major crisis tested the new generation. A remote colony experienced a communication failure during a severe solar event. The young commanders disagreed. Some wanted immediate evacuation. Others wanted more data before acting. The old Avarian system demanded certainty. The human approach demanded adaptation. The new doctrine demanded something harder. Discussion. The commanders combined their information, questioned their assumptions, and created a solution neither side would have found alone. The colony survived. The report listed no single hero. No individual commander received all the credit. When Serafina reviewed the final document, she smiled faintly. That was exactly what Ethan wanted. Years later, when historians asked why the human soldier had refused the highest command position in Avarian history, the answer became one of the most studied decisions of the era. He had not rejected power because he disliked responsibility. He rejected unnecessary dependence because he understood responsibility too well. A commander who must always be present has built a fragile future. A commander who teaches others to lead has built something stronger. And somewhere beyond the stars, two civilizations slowly learned the same lesson. The greatest leaders were not the ones who made themselves impossible to replace. They were the ones who made sure the future did not need them to survive. 20 years after the first Joint Command mission, the galaxy no longer remembered Neuralis as a defeat. It remembered it as the moment two civilizations stopped measuring strength the same way. The old battle records remained in the Avarian archives. The damaged carrier, the impossible decisions, the human rescue soldier who arrived without a fleet, without authority, and without certainty. But history rarely preserved the smallest details. The quiet moments, the choices made when nobody was watching. Those were the moments that changed everything. Serafina Vera stood inside the Hall of Command, an ancient chamber where generations of Valkyrie leaders had studied the decisions of those who came before them. The walls still carried the names of legendary commanders, warriors who had defended Avaria through centuries of conflict. She touched one of the old inscriptions before looking at the newest record displayed beside it. Adaptive command doctrine, a concept that had once been considered impossible. A system built not on perfect predictions, but on continuous learning. A system created from two different ways of seeing the universe. A young officer approached her while reviewing the archive. Commander Vera. Serafina turned. Yes. The officer looked at the record beside her. Is it true that a human changed the Valkyrie command system? Serafina studied the question. She had heard variations of it for years. Some asked with admiration, others with doubt. But the answer was always the same. No, the officer looked confused. No. Serafina looked through the observation window at the ships moving across the orbital station. Avarian vessels. Human vessels. Ships from worlds that had once operated separately. One person does not change a civilization. She paused. But one person can show a civilization something it was unable to see. The officer remained silent. Serafina understood why the question existed. History liked simple explanations. A hero. A victory. A single moment that changed everything. But reality was never that clean. Ethan Walker had not transformed the Avarians by being stronger than them. He had not defeated their traditions. He had respected them enough to understand them. And in return, they had respected him enough to question themselves. The final record of Ethan Walker was not a military achievement. It was a rescue mission near the outer colonies, years after he had stepped away from official command. A communication network had failed during a severe solar disturbance. The information available was incomplete. The situation was uncertain. A younger commander asked Ethan what decision they should make. He looked at the data for a long time. Then he asked a different question. What are we missing? That question became the beginning of the solution. The team reviewed the information together. Human specialists analyzed changing conditions. Avarian officers examined structural risks. They disagreed. They debated. They adjusted. And eventually, they found the answer. The mission succeeded. Not because Ethan Walker knew what to do. Because he created an environment where everyone could contribute what they knew. Years later, Serafina visited him on Earth. He lived near the coast, far away from command centers and military ceremonies. The old rescue scanner still sat on his workbench. Scratched. Repaired. Functional. You still use that? Serafina asked. Ethan looked at the device. Sometimes. You have access to better equipment. He smiled slightly. I know. She picked it up carefully. Then why keep it? Ethan looked toward the ocean outside. Because it reminds me that damaged things can still be useful. Serafina understood the meaning behind the answer. It was never just about the scanner. It was about people, systems, civilizations. Everything could fail. Everything could change. The question was whether they were willing to learn afterward. Before leaving, Serafina placed the Valkyrie command insignia beside the scanner. Ethan looked at it. That seems important. She nodded. It is. Why leave it here? She looked at him. Because you taught us something we forgot. Ethan waited. Strength is not proven by standing alone. A quiet moment passed between them. The stars above Earth continued moving exactly as they always had. Endless. Uncertain. Beautiful. Across the galaxy, countless worlds continued to debate what made a great commander. Some still believed it was victory. Others believed it was control. But those who studied the history of the Valkyrie and the human soldier remembered a different lesson. The greatest leaders were not those who never failed. They were not those who carried every burden alone. They were the ones who built something stronger than themselves. Because in a universe filled with endless unknowns, the greatest act of courage was not having all the answers. It was having the humility to search for them together. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this journey across the stars. We hope this story brought you inspiration and emotion. Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Intergalactic Untold for more unforgettable sci-fi tales and human stories from beyond the galaxy.